We're going to talk about the best players under 25. My list: Giannis Antetokounmpo, Joel Embiid, Kristaps Porzingis, Nikola Jokic, Anthony Davis, Devin Booker. I don't think Jamal Murray gets enough love. I don't know if Bradley Beal knows he's 23, because I didn't, or 24 going into this year. Who do you think, if you have to pick, because picking one is impossible, but if you have to pick two or three that have the shot at being the best player in the NBA soon, who do you think it would be?
I went to my trusty companion, the Basketball Reference player comparison tool, and I looked at some of the big guys. So Towns, Porzingis, Embiid, and Anthony Davis, who, like Bradley Beal, is one of those guys who's still suspiciously young, and it feels like he's been around forever. And, they all stack up pretty comparably. I think Porzingis is actually the guy that comes in a little bit behind the other three, just because the rebounding isn't there for a guy as big as he is. That's kind of the one fault with him. But in terms of those four, if we're talking big guys, I think Towns is probably the one that I like the most at this point. I think he's the guy that has the fewest glaring weaknesses. It's neck and neck really with him and Davis, but Towns to me gets a little bit of an edge just because he is younger. Obviously he's underwhelmed a little bit on the defensive end. But with a guy like Embiid, there's such a glaring injury risk that it's really, really hard to kind of convince yourself to look past that. If you're willing to do that, I think he's probably the obvious answer. And like I said, with Porzingis, you have the defensive issues and the rebounding issues. But if he clears that up, and I think if he's in a better situation in New York where he's able to be a more featured option on what's maybe a bad team, but that's often how this works in the early stages of these players' careers. Sorry, I had to work that in there for you.
Important. Look, it's important to objectivity.
Right. I mean, if Carmelo Anthony isn't in New York and the keys are given to Kristaps Porzingis, I think we probably view him in maybe an even more favorable light than we do right now.
One of the things in a perfect world where nobody ever gets injured, right, which would be amazing, and actually
that would be great, wouldn't it?
In Embiid's case, if he was healthy 82 games a year and playing 36 minutes, it's Wilt Chamberlain's effing numbers. Now, Embiid's one of the few players in NBA history who could not play at all and still have so much impact on being the most fun team and fun player in a locker room, if you like his sense of humor, which if you don't, I disagree. In terms of
who doesn't at this point? Are there people who don't like Joel Embiid's sense of humor?
There's got to be. But in terms of Anthony Davis and Karl Anthony Towns, they're the two most polished at this point, I would think, at 23, 24 years old. And as you mentioned with the defensive problems with Towns, it was starting to get a little better at the end of last season. And actually, Towns' second half was so monumentally stronger than his first. One would have to think that if he can consistently put together a full season like that, which we know it will happen, and with Thibodeau being there, we know his defensive prowess in terms of driving, hopefully not all of his players into the ground. Hopefully he doesn't have Joakim's Noah's knees by the time he gets to 27. But if he does, these next 4 years are going to be remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, he's the guy to me that I'm kind of like least scared, I guess, to invest in. Like with Embiid, I would love to just go full on, become the biggest Joel Embiid fan out there, but it just seems like it's too good to be true, right? I mean, it was such a thrilling 33 game sample last year, and when he went down with the meniscus at the end of the year, it was like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. This is kind of what we expected all along. What concerns me is like, what if he comes back now and plays 75 games this year? Like, where are we going to be at this time in 2018, looking ahead to Joel Embiid's, 2018-19 season and the rest of his career? Everything is too good to be true with Embiid right now. I want it to be true. I hope he finds a way to stay healthy, and I hope that in a decade we look back and kind of laugh and say, wow, we really thought this guy was going to end up playing 50 games in the NBA and that was going to be it.
You're right, though, because what's always going to happen with Embiid may be similar to Davis, just not to the same extent because of how much we've seen Davis play. And like I just looked up before, last year, 75 games, although he averages about 65 a season. And there's always just something. And now that that's happened, do we have to call it what it is? Is he an injury-prone player? But moving on just from those guys, from the bigs, because a lot of them get the unicorn label too. They're not just bigs, like Jokic, for example, who I've been very high on, and so have some others haven't, depending on how much you like advanced stats. If you love advanced stats, you have literally everything in front of you that says he's better than DeMarcus Cousins. If you like tape, and I lean towards the tape more, DeMarcus Cousins is going to literally push everybody out of the way and get his points regardless. So both tremendous players. But in terms of the backcourt, right? Jamal Murray, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, I'm missing some. Are any of those guys going to transcend what we've seen so far in the already absurdly point guard heavy league, and we haven't even seen development from Lonzo and Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox and all the potential they have? Hate the word, but it's true.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I'm more excited for this rookie class than I am for, guys like Jamal Murray, and, some might want to throw Buddy Hield in there. He looked all right after the trade to Sacramento. And I like Murray a lot. The Cavs are looking for in a Kyrie trade, and there's basically what they're looking for is a younger player who's already kind of halfway on his way to stardom. And one of the players in that group was Jamal Murray. And I think that kind of turned a lot of people's heads, because if you don't follow the NBA really closely, or you're not a Denver Nuggets fan, I don't think people realize, the amount of potential that Jamal Murray flashed. And when you look at the numbers, they weren't all that impressive, but it was just every 3 or 4 games he would do something, or he would have a half or a quarter that would really make you go, there's only 10, 15 guys in the league that can do this kind of thing. And it reminds me a little bit of what we saw from Steph Curry in the early stages of his career. And by no means do I think that Jamal Murray is going to be the next Stephen Curry, but those type of things, like being able to put up 20 points in a quarter as a rookie, and having just no conscience whatsoever, just to keep shooting and keep shooting and keep shooting. That's a skill in some ways, and it can turn into something that gets a lot of guys glued to the bench, but. I think Jamal Murray does it in a way that you kind of understand that there's something more there. He's not just gunning. So I like him quite a bit. I don't know that he's ever going to become, a transcendent star. And again, certainly not on a Curry type of level. But he's someone that I look for out of that draft class to really be a name that we're talking about still in 5 or 10 years. And, when you're looking back at that class, there's really not that many guys right now that you can say that about. But this rookie class coming in, man, I hope it lives up to the hype. And last year there were guys that I liked, there were guys I didn't like. This year it's like everybody coming off the board until you get to picks like 13 and 14. I'm like, yep, love that guy, that guy. Hope he's great. He's going to be awesome. Like Malik Monk went 11th, man, and I get why he went where he did. He's got some limitations, but that's the kind of draft we're dealing with. And I don't know if we want to get into this now, but there's a lot of guys at the top of the 2018 draft too that are going to be in that same category.
I am in the camp since 2 years ago that Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to be the best player on the planet in 3 or 4 years, and maybe sooner. So it's not just the statistics, top 20 in 5 different categories for the first time in NBA history. He had a better 2-point percentage last year than Anthony Davis did. And that's with a guy without a jump shot, which we know he's working on. In my what-if scenario, right, he already plays defense tremendously well. He's a threat in transition as well as anybody else. He doesn't make any sense, like he wasn't born here. He's got a 8-foot wingspan on a 7-foot body, and he can play point guard. Or as your favorite reference to a basketball reference put it, position says point guard or small forward or power forward or center. That's what it actually says across the board.
Can't play shooting guard though.
Cannot be a shooting guard. No,
cannot. Absolutely kills you if you put him in at the 2.
Can't be Clay. If you try to be Clay, you can only dribble once, Giannis. That's it. You're done.
That's the thing. I mean, I don't mean to cut you off, but I mean, he really is in that point of his career still where, we were this 2 years ago going into what would have been his second or third year in the league.
NBA, second year.
It was, man, if this guy has a jump shot. And then going into last year, it was, man, if this guy develops a jump shot. And here we are again going into this next year of his career. And we're already talking about him as, I think maybe not everybody would have him in the top 10, but most smart basketball people would say Giannis is probably in the latter half of the top 10 overall players in the league.
So my point is, like, let's say what if Giannis is 35% from 3 this year? I'm just saying. What if he's 35%? He was 27%.
But yeah, I mean, the thing with Giannis too, I watched a ton of Bucks being here in Wisconsin. It's not that he's just missing shots. It's that the confidence still isn't quite there. So I think once that comes and he's comfortable just taking them, like what we've always said as Bucks fans when we talk about this in the office is, like, nobody cares if Giannis makes threes. Obviously, you want him to make threes. You just want him to be a threat, and that's still not quite where he's at right now. Like, if you watch that Raptors series in the first round, right? DeMar Carroll and PJ Tucker are guarding Giannis 5-6 feet off of him on the perimeter because they know he's not going to shoot it. And unless it was the end of a shot clock or the end of a quarter,
right,
or he was wide open and he was feeling it, he just wasn't going to do anything from three. And he was still able to, do his little kind of hesitation, one giant step, get to the rim. Like imagine when defenders have to start actually respecting him 23 feet from the basket, like most players in the NBA. I think that's the point where we're really going to see him take off because he's still at the point where he's hitting a lot of contested shots. He's making a lot of difficult shots. I think he doesn't even have to be a 36% three-point shooter. If he can become a 33% three-point shooter and just be a threat there to catch and shoot, I think it's going to be pretty amazing what that opens up for him.
He starts 0 for 5.
Well, one of the issues for him too through these first few years of his career has been foul trouble, and a lot of that's come on the offensive end because when you're giving the defense 5 or 6 feet of a head start, they're able to get in position. And he, especially 2 seasons ago and the season prior, committing charges was a huge issue for him, and it still is. He's gotten better at it, but again, once defenders are forced to guard him more closely, I think you're going to see a reduction in that, and it's going to result in him getting to the free throw line even more than he already does.